There are many shows dedicated to Magic the Gathering strategies, decks, and formats. But unlike all of them, this channel is about discussing an individual card, an isolated card, an unrelated card. This is an Magic card. Hello random person, and welcome to episode number 1 of An Magic Card. My name is Dusty Cupboards, and on this episode, I shall be discussing one of the most important cards in Magic's history. Alright, I guess I'll just click this little button here, and okay. It's Kithkin Zephyrnaut. That's what it is. That's the card. A 2/2 common white Kithkin soldier creature from Morningtide, the second and final set in the Lorwyn block, which was released on February 1st, 2008. Cards from Morningtide can be identified by the rising sun set symbol located to the right of the type line, and in development, Morningtide was known by the codename Butter. Like Lorwyn before it, Morningtide takes place on the plane of Lorwyn, which is notable for completely lacking humans. In many ways, the short hobbit-like creatures called Kithkin, with their football-shaped heads and exaggerated features, fill the role that humans would ordinarily have occupied. Kithkin are found primarily in white and center around notions of community. While most commonly being associated with the plane of Lorwyn, they originated with the card Amrau Kithkin in Legends. The word Kithkin is somewhat unique to Magic the Gathering, but can be easily assumed to be a combination of kith meaning friends and kin meaning family. It is not uncommon to hear people refer to kith and kin, and the brilliant wordsmiths at Wizards of the Coast simply smashed these words together like two halves of a meld creature. Kithkin also cherish an ancient tome called the Book of Kith and Kin, which is culturally important to them and is probably a really cool artifact, but we've never seen it and it has never been explained. The other half of Kithkin Zephyrnaut's name can be similarly dissected. The term Zephyr comes up frequently in Magic the Gathering and refers to a soft breeze. The suffix naut comes from Greek and means sailor, which is why we call people who sail through space astronauts, and individuals who sail through the air are called aeronauts. And sailing through breezes is exactly what Kithkin Zephyrnaut might do, as its ability grants flying. Sometimes. Kithkin Zephyrnaut has the ability Kinship, which in addition to again referencing kin, is one of the new mechanics introduced in Morningtide, along with the wildly popular mechanics Prowl and Reinforce. Kinship was featured on Rules Tip card number 2 that was found in Morningtide booster packs and helps to explain how this mechanic functioned. Kinship is present on 12 cards from Morningtide, and strangely has never been used since. Kinship is shared pretty evenly among colors, with red and green having 3 cards including 1 at each rarity, and the other having 2 cards featured at common and uncommon. Kinship is an ability word, meaning that it indicates a set of rules but does not impart those rules by itself. All cards with Kinship are creatures and function in a similar manner. At the beginning of your upkeep, you look at the top card of your library, and if that card shares a creature type with the Kinship card, then it will trigger some kind of action. In the case of Kithkin Zephyrnaut, our small friend takes to the skies, and this is where that breeze sailing really starts to pay off. If you have a Kithkin or soldier on the top of your library and choose to reveal it, Kithkin Zephyrnaut will climb into the cockpit of his winged vessel and gain +2/+2, flying and vigilance until end of turn. It's a Kithkin ship powered by a Kithkin's Kinship. A 4/4 flying vigilance for 3 mana is pretty good. Those kinds of stats will traditionally cost you something like, 5 mana, although it should be noted that vigilance isn't quite as good here since the Zephyrnaut will return to being a 2/2 on your opponent's turn. It's also good to remember that you don't have to reveal the card if it matches your Kinshipper. Perhaps your opponent has a spell which only destroys flyers. You can pretend you didn't see a Kithkin or soldier on top of your library to prevent your Zephyrnaut from taking to the sky. Maybe the card on top of your library will greatly influence your opponent's decision making, and you choose not to reveal it as a super genius 4-dimensional chess move. They will assume you don't have that card and fail to play around it, leaving you to surprise them. If you have multiple Zephyrnauts, they will all trigger separately, meaning you can reveal the same Kithkin or soldier to trigger each of them. Or, if you have a way of shuffling your library, maybe you can try and rearrange your deck to give yourself another chance. If you do have a way of shuffling your library, this also lets you peek at the top card of your library before you draw it, which can be a nice way to get some extra card selection. If you have multiple upkeeps, then you'll get a bonus for each successful reveal. Let's say you have a totally normal Magic deck with 242 cards in it, and you want to give yourself a decent chance of hitting with your Kithkin Zephyrnaut. How many Kithkin soldiers should you run? Well, you've drawn 7 cards to start the game, and then at least 3 more as you're playing lands to power out a terrifying turn 3 Kithkin Zephyrnaut. On turn 4, you will have 232 cards remaining in your deck, meaning you would need to have at least 116 Kithkin soldiers in your deck to give yourself a 50-50 chance at flying over and hitting your opponent for 4 damage. Luckily for you, there are 20 Kithkin soldier cards in Morningtide, 13 of which are white, or colorless in the case of the equipment, which is also somehow a soldier. Let's say it's suddenly 2008, and you're drafting Lorwyn Morningtide after a long day of playing the newly released Grand Theft Auto 4. Between the 2 sets, you'll have 66 different Kithkin or soldiers to pick from for your Kithkin Zephyrnaut-centered draft deck, including creatures from every color, tribal enchantments, and tribal instants. Remember though, since Morningtide will be the 3rd pack in your draft, you will want to load up on Kithkin soldiers in the first 2 packs to cut off that strategy, and then aggressively take Zephyrnauts in pack 3, since despite being a common, they are harder to get than commons from the first 2 Lorwyn packs. Like the vigilant 4/4 flyers that Kithkin Zephyrnaut sometimes resembles, if you can reliably trigger kinship, this card can be a real payoff in Limited. If you're looking for some constructed applications, it should be noted that Zephyrnaut is pauper legal. Out of every format where Kithkin Zephyrnaut could be played, it isn't banned in any of them. And despite only being printed once 12 years ago, at the time of this recording you can purchase a beautiful Kithkin Zephyrnaut for only 20 cents. And with its price fluctuating between 0.02 and 0.03 tickets on MTGO, it has even been legal in Penny Dreadful at times. The format where our little Sky Sailor sees the most play is likely EDH though, where offbeat tribal decks are popular, and 58.82% of Brigid decks are getting lofty with Kithkin Zephyrnaut. Lastly, let's discuss something that's been right in front of our face this whole time: the card's beautiful aesthetics. Printed in 2008, Kithkin Zephyrnaut features the modern card frame, which debuted in 2003. As a white card, which generally come first in a set order, this card is 16 of 150 in the Morningtide set, following Kinsbale Cavalier, but preceding Meadowboon. The illustration is truly gorgeous, completed in acrylic paints and owing to the work of 2 artists. Longtime Magic artist Quentin Hoover provided the sketch for the piece, which shows a similar composition but with a notably more pin-headed Kithkin. Based on Hoover's notes, we can see that the wings for the flying ship are apparently made from woven grass, although this element doesn't necessarily seem to have made it to the finished piece. Quentin Hoover is responsible for over 70 cards from the history of Magic, going all the way back to Alpha. That original Kithkin from Legends was also done by Hoover, and for this reason he was occasionally asked to contribute art for new Kithkin, Amrau or otherwise. A lot of his cards have a distinct Art Nouveau style, which is much beloved, although as time went on, this look became less in line with the majority of Magic art. It's perhaps due to this stylistic shift that he collaborated with Val Merrick, another longtime Magic artist, to complete this and another Morningtide piece. Kithkin Zephyrnaut retains some of Hoover's signature style, but the paint is applied in a much more impressionist manner, with soft textures and more subtle delineations. Overall, the piece is quite wonderful and manages to look natural alongside either artist's catalog, while also fitting perfectly into the whimsical setting of Lorwyn. The art does a good job of showing that the Kithkin can fly, but making it clear that it is not its default state. The piece also has lots of nice little details, like the tool bag and the soldier's sword. Many of the elements depicted possess tangible weight and texture. There is a sense of depth with the foreground, middle ground, and background, but it is flattened in a way which might look at home on the pages of a storybook. The pose of the Kithkin is calm but noble, looking off to his right in a way which makes him seem worldly and prepared, and is mirrored by the direction of his craft. The character is clearly not human, but not monstrous either. The wide expanse of orange sky and the elevated tousling of the Kithkin's hair make us feel like we could take off at any moment, carried upwards by a warm breeze. Well, that's all I've got to say about one of the most important cards in the history of Magic the Gathering. Obviously, this card was chosen at random, and in hindsight, I wish that it had been a card with an easier to pronounce name. I honestly have said the phrase Zephyrnaut more than I ever thought I would in my entire life. I hope you found this mildly entertaining. Join me next time when I discuss another completely random Magic card on An Magic Card. So the concept is that I talk about a totally unimportant Magic card for a really long time. That's the joke.